My name is Anna-Mari Fanthorpe, and I'll be your host today. Today, we have a returning guest. AJ is here from Picwa, and he's going to be talking about tools for onboarding and working remotely. So obviously, this is our whole world now. So it's a really good opportunity for us to understand how we can work a little bit more globally, perhaps by having folks in our team that aren't in the same country, and also to talk about what tools work really well collaboratively online and in the cloud. So this is going to be an informative session, and I'm looking forward to all of AJ's advice. Now, just a reminder, if you're new with us, we are streaming live on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and we'd love for you to get your questions answered by AJ. So do drop them in the chat function, Q&A function, or the comments section. I'll be checking it throughout this session, and we will make this session work for you and your business. Now, without further ado, AJ, thank you so much for coming today and enlightening us on this topic.
No, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And I can't wait to share what I've learned and the team's learned in the past 6 years.
Oh, awesome. Now, I know you've got lots to kind of share with us. So what I'm going to do is stop my video, and I'll make sure everything's running in the back. Just let me know if you need anything. Do you want to take questions throughout or at the end?
I would prefer at the end.
Perfect. I'll just stay unmuted, and I'll just, yep, perfect. Okay, great.
Perfect. Alrighty, so is everyone able to see my screen?
Yep, all good.
Cool, perfect. So Anna-Mari's done an amazing introduction. My name is AJ, and I run a global tech recruitment company. I've run multiple teams remotely over the past 6 years. I've been a former CTO, and one of the really, I suppose, new thinking type of ones, because since 2015, I've been a remote first type of person where I've always liked working with talent from overseas, not just in New Zealand. And so today, we're going to leverage that 6 years of experience and talk about the tools and methods you can use to effectively onboard remote staff and also maintain a high-performing team when they are remote. Because I do understand that it's a totally new way of working, and there's a lot of things around it. Like, for example, when you're all in the office, you know what everyone's up to. You also know there's energy within the room, and everyone's working on the same aligned mission. When you're remote, there is some disconnect, and there's certain things that you need to do to bring it back to the same amount of alignment, energy, and of course, productivity. So we'll go through all of that today. So we've got 5 sections that I'm going to be going through. The very first section is going to be about global talent acquisition. The second is about global payroll and legal management. The third one is about vetting candidates, which is absolutely important when you're doing it. When you're hiring overseas, it does get a bit tricky, again, because you can't see them, they can't see you, and there's just so much you have to look for. And then the fourth section is about onboarding. Studies show that companies with a strong onboarding process improve new hire retention by 72% and productivity by 70%. So super crucial. And the last section is really running a productive remote communications within that team. So to be honest, to be completely fair, I think section 1 and 2 will be kind of boring, but section 3, 4, 5, full of golden nuggets, I hope. All right, so sourcing global talent. Again, in this day and age, you've got amazing tools like Upwork.com. That's a freelancing portal, freelancer.com, and people per hour if you want to go and hire talent fairly quickly. So these are job boards where you can go put up a particular project or job that you have or role, and people apply for it within these platforms. Now, the pros of these type of platforms is that you've now got the ability to source globally, whereas before you didn't. Payroll and contractual agreement are managed within this platform. So all you've got to do is just pay the amount you've promised to the freelancer through the platform, and they handle all the compliance and payroll around it. There's there are some inbuilt mechanisms of basic vettings. Like, for example, there's a success score for each freelancer. So you do get to see who are good and who are not that good. Now, the cons of freelancing portals is that it's not easy to source rapidly. it does take time. You probably should consider, if you're good at it, maybe 2-3 days. If you're new to this, it'll take you about 2 weeks. And the biggest con of using Upwork.com, freelancer.com, people per hour, is it's difficult to find long-term hires because you've got predominantly freelancers that work on here. So if you're looking for a freelancer, these platforms are absolutely amazing. If you're looking for a long-term hire, not that great. Now, the other con is that even though there is a good success score for a certain type of candidate on these portals, you still need to vet that talent pool. You still need to see whether they are a good fit and they do have the skills that you need for whatever task you want them to carry out. Lastly, with these platforms, another con is aggressive fees, not only to you, but also the freelancer. So these platforms take around about 20 to 15% of the amount you pay them and then give it to the freelancer itself. So it's not so nice for them. And then for you guys, that you have to pay around about 5 to 6% extra. So there's quite a bit of aggressive costs involved. So that's freelancing portals. And it works quite well if you're looking for talent relatively quickly and you just want a freelancer. And you do know what you're doing, of course. Second is LinkedIn Jobs. Again, it's good for long-term hires, but there's a poor ability to source. And that's just the nature of LinkedIn Jobs at the moment. It's not really that strong job board. The other pro of LinkedIn Jobs is that it doesn't cost that much to do. It's fairly easy. It's just like posting a job on Seek, and it's much, much, much cheaper than Seek. I believe Seek is between $300 to $600 per job post. LinkedIn, I believe, give you one free job post, and then you just have to have a recruiter account to get more out. So relatively cheap. The other pro of LinkedIn is that they don't just show your job ad to New Zealand or Australia like Seek would. You do get candidates from all over the world applying to it. Now, the cons of LinkedIn Jobs is that it's not rapid. It takes a lot of time, and you might actually have to run ads of that ad to actually get a good amount of candidates on. The other thing is that you've got to vet these candidates very aggressively, not just from a standpoint of whether their skills are good or not, but also their background. That's very important. So portals like Upwork, freelance people per hour, they do all the heavy lifting of making sure that they've got police compliance, they've got normal citizenship or residency compliance, they're not criminals, and they're also got all their payment and payroll and all that compliance put in place. Whereas with LinkedIn, you're going to have to either create a legal entity overseas or have a contractual agreement, or use a third-party tool, which I will show you soon, which makes it a bit easier. But again, it's a bit more out in the open, and you've also got to have good sourcing skills. Now, the third way of sourcing global talent is using a global recruitment agency, which is local. So that's us and some others as well. And again, I would recommend always going for a local global recruitment agency that specializes in your industry. So if you're looking for tech staff, give us a call. But if you're looking for design staff, don't give us a call. Look for a global recruitment agency that specializes in that, because your vetting process is then taken care of. They know exactly what they're looking for. They know exactly how to pipe the candidate down the actual pipeline and make sure they do actually make the mark. And as you know yourself, if you've hired before, vetting does take a lot of energy and time. In addition to that, these specialized agencies just know where to look, how to look, and get you a good chance of getting the best talent. So this is effectively your sourcing global talent and how you could do it and go about doing it. Second is global payroll and employee compliance. Now, let's just suppose that you don't want to go to a freelancing portal. You don't want to go to a local global recruitment agency. You'd rather go through LinkedIn Jobs, or you've, just through word of mouth, you found someone overseas. Now, in order to actually hire that person, you've either got to have a legal entity within that country, or they've got to have a legal entity within that country and they contract you. There's a lot of problems around it. And, when it comes to compliance, making sure that your IP is secure. Also, there are proper contractual agreements within that working relationship. For example, your days off, your sick leaves, all that sort of stuff. It needs to be backed by something legal that's local to that country. So if you have a legal entity in that country, makes it easier. If you don't, it's rather difficult. So you can either use, again, a recruitment agency because they have those entities in those overseas places which actually carry it off for you. Or what you can do is actually physically go to the foreign country, which is probably a big waste of money, and create that entity. Now, the other two is letsdealinremote.com. So these platforms actually have legal entities in around about 300 countries. So you can practically hire anywhere. And this is where you can actually create your employment contracts, which are in alignment with the country's local laws, and also bound them by it to take care of your IP, and also run your payroll through these systems too. So letsdeal.com, remote.com, amazing tools. And they've just made, honestly, hiring globally a whole lot more better and easier for you as a company here. So that's that. Now, vetting candidates. In fact, let me just go back for a second. I do want to talk about the common pitfalls with platforms like Deal and Remote. Now, look, they look good on paper and do exactly what they promise. But I do want to mention that hiring globally has a lot more caveats attached to it. For example, you've got to source, vet, and manage the retention of your staff. So having local experts in these foreign countries do give you a better chance of finding top talent within those foreign countries. Having a strong vetting process, which I'm going to talk about later, is absolutely critical regardless of the location. And the most important reason why I would say don't just contract someone from New Zealand to, pay them on PayPal or Stripe or whatever works and get them to invoice you like that, because managing retention then becomes super difficult. And if they are going to be working on tasks that are important to your business, you need to have some form of retention and also some form of hold as well on the person, just to make sure that freelancers can just move away any moment. An employee, you expect some sort of loyalty. The other thing that I forgot to mention is that letsdeal.com and remote.com also help you attach benefits within your employment contracts. So what this really means is that if there are health plans within a country like India, for example, when you're creating a contract on letsdeal.com or remote.com, you can actually embed that into your employee contract and offer that benefit to your employee. So you can add multiple benefits, health insurance, gym memberships, maybe it's a laptop or whatever it is to hold that person, retain that person, and also give them more than just a salary. So it does help you go above and beyond. So now I'll move on to the next. So vetting candidates. The one thing is that it's important to balance the amount of vetting you do so that you're doing as much as you can to prevent bad hires, but also not overdoing it to a state that you're missing out on good hires. Now, in the tech industry, I see that we overdo this. We'll give someone 3 exams and then after that, a project, and then say, all right, this person is a fit. Again, like that sometimes just scares away good talent because there's no guarantee they'll get the job. Why should they spend the time? Particularly in a market where, as you all know, that it's now the job seekers that have the power and the employers that are kind of on the back foot because of the demand sort of saga. So again, I'm going to talk to you about certain tools and methods that we've used to balance it on our end and also make it a good experience for the candidate. So we are fans of exams. We do think they're good, but we don't like the typical exam. So we use a platform called adderface.com. And this is where you can create a exam on really any sort of industry. It could be, suppose tech, for example, you want a Java developer, you can quickly go create a Java online assessment. They're pre-done. You just have to go hit, I want this one, create, and you're done. Or if it's design, you want someone who's good in Figma or Photoshop, you can go to adderface.com, select a pre-built one, and you've got one built. And again, English and communication all built within this platform too, so you can create those assessments as well. Now, the key reason why this is my personal favorite is because one, plug and play nature, like I mentioned. The second is that it's incredibly intuitive interface for candidates. This isn't an exam. It's done through a chatbot. So when your candidates come onto adface.com to complete the exam, it's like they're just talking to someone on the other side through a chatbot and going through it. Now, what we found is that when compared to typical exams, the one, they don't do that well when it's a typical exam because of the pressure you have. Two, they don't really complete it because it's an exam or want to do it. With Adface, we've seen people wanting to actually do the exam, wanting to actually participate in it, and actually quite liking this new experience. So my personal favorite, and there are many other platforms like testgorilla.com, vervo.com. We've done them all. Our favorite is adface.com because it's one, improved the candidate experience, given us a access to mini library of assessments. And of course, we've had more people complete the assessment and also do better within it. And here's the facts. Adface does have very difficult exams, a bit more difficult than Vervo and TestGorilla, and they've still done better on the Adface platform. So my personal favorite, and I just cannot recommend them enough. Now, the second is pair working, and this is a method. Again, my personal favorite because you get a strong sense of how the person will collaborate with you and also get an understanding of their skills depth. So this could just be that, all right, once the person has passed their Adface assessment, right, you now go and do a 10-minute or 15-minute interview, and then you put them onto a 3 to 4 hour pair working schedule with you. Of course, you only want to bring through the 2 or 3 candidates that you really want to work with after their interview and Adface assessment. Pair working really, really tells you a lot. It's very overlooked and underutilized. In the tech world, we call this pair programming, but in the normal world, we just call this pair working. So it could be either working with you, or it could be working with a team member that's a domain expert in your team, just to get a real strong depth of how this person will really be when they're working with you. Now, 3, going through their portfolio, but doing it through a new lens. So a lot of the times when you go through a portfolio, you're just looking at, well, what have they done? How good does it look? And, what sort of things have they built? Does it match my job description? Does it match the sort of stuff we're going to do? Are the designs they've done similar to our business? Which is great. That certainly has to be done. But I think we need to add a higher pinch of curiosity. You want to actually understand why they developed or designed things in a certain way. Really understand their thought process behind doing things, because that will give you a depth of understanding of their skills. So from a code perspective, if they've built a certain module, I want to understand why they picked this library, why they built code in this way, as opposed to, okay, this looks good, blah, blah, blah. And then in your design, you want to also understand that, well, why do you have layers set out like this? Why did you use Photoshop? Why did you not use Figma? Right? Really get an understanding of how they work and how they apply their skills. So that's going through portfolio. 4, reduce bias. Now, particularly when you are hiring globally, this is very, very important. You've got to take in cultural differences. You see, people in India and Chile don't commonly create detailed resumes and prefer to take home exercises versus whiteboarding or, giving them an exam. Hence why we like Adface, because it's a whole lot more congruent with what they expect. So again, understanding the market. When you do go to countries that are an LEDC country, they don't actually put a lot of emphasis on creating a detailed resume. It's not the norms. So if you don't get a good resume, it doesn't mean it's not a good candidate. Pick up the phone, talk to them, because most of the time they just don't know how to create a good resume. And within the country, it's just not the norms, as opposed to an MEDC country. Again, Adface is a good hack for, I think, what we've seen, America, India, even Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, for giving an exam and it being not taken in a way that, oh my God, I've got an exam, I've got to pass this. So that's been quite good. Number 5, Gorge non-technical skills. When you're hiring remotely, this is probably the most important thing. Someone could be very good at what they do, but if they cannot communicate, cannot work autonomously, remote work's just not going to work. And I want to emphasize on the fact that they need to be autonomous. And I'm going to talk more about that in section 5 as well, why it's important. So what you're looking for when you're gauging non-technical skills: 1, autonomy, proactivity, collaboration, strong written and verbal communication. See, these few things can actually make or break a remote employee. So it's super important, very, very important. Onboarding now. So like I mentioned before, and now we're going into tools as well. Studies show that companies with a strong onboarding process improve new hire retention by 72% and productivity by 70%. So it makes a lot of sense to actually put an effort into the onboarding and really try and nail that. Now, no one's perfect. No one gets this 100% right. And we are always continuously improving what we do. But here are 5 goals that drive our framework. I'm not going to put the framework out completely because I'd rather you build your own, decide what's congruent with your company culture, also the type of skills you require, because this is very much in line with tech. So 1, you've got to reach out early. Onboarding begins in the weeks before an employee's first day. Really figure out what they need, where they're going to be, and all that sort of stuff. 2, set clear expectations and goals. Very, very important. You've got to be sure to outline how you expect them to approach work as a remote employee and also goals you expect from them. So over here, you would talk about your hours, the type of flexibility, and why that flexibility is there and when it's not there. Because telling someone, you can, 2 days in, 2 days, 3 days out, that's hybrid, or, you suppose you are completely remote in this scenario, and hours can vary. For example, when suppose you're working on an ad hoc basis and you need a call every day with your remote person, they do have to start work at a certain time. But in some cases, they might not have to start at a certain time, given that they're given a project which will carry on for 3 to 4 days before you need to communicate. In scenarios like that, you've got to explain what that flexibility really means and why it is in play and why it isn't in play. So be really clear. Incredibly clear. 3, create a system for feedback. So give each new employee an in-depth overview of, again, any virtual community benefits that you offer. So if you use a platform like Let's Deal or remote.com, where they've got, for example, a health plan included, even some mental health plans, gymnasium plans all included, let them know that they've got all those benefits. And in addition to that, chat to them, ask them, how has your week been? After a month, how are things going for you? Are you lonely? Are you feeling good with the work? Have you been using the benefits? No, yes, why? Those are the type of things you want to ask. Now, of course, you can digitize this, which is what we're going to go through soon. And 4, assess their workplace. Now, some of your employees may be new to remote work, so it's important to assess their at-home workspace and see how you could help them for better productivity. So again, this is simply done. How we do it is we just say, give us a picture of your at-home work environment. Tell us what you've got. And what we like to do is top it up with, maybe a lamp to help with the light. Top it up with maybe a keyboard or a monitor to help with productivity. For some reason, every tech person just says, yeah, give me an extra monitor and I'll boost productivity by 2x. By the way, I have no sources for that data. And so really figuring out how you can help them improve productivity within their workspace itself, like you would if they were coming to your office. 5, develop a handbook. Now, documentation is crucial for remote work. And to be fair, I believe it's crucial for any business. Start a handbook that documents everything about what it's like to work at your company while being remote. And it needs to be specific to the area or role. What you should do once you've built it is actually revisit it often and empower employees to add to it. So the entire department. And before you know it, you have a strong handbook of what it is actually like to work with you. And when you do get a new hire, it's very easy to just hand it over and say, hey, this is who we are and this is what we like. And then that onboarding process, that inducting process becomes a whole lot more easier. Now, I did mention that I would show you tools. Now, we like to use Notion for a lot of things. I'm sure you've heard of this before as well. It's got a lot of features within it. But Notion or Atlassian Confluence, those two tools are incredibly amazing for documentation. My preference for documentation is Confluence because it's in one nice place and it's built only for that, whereas Notion is built for a lot of things. So again, I would use it if you're a power user, but if you want to keep things simple, my preference is Confluence. Now, Pathlight is a, again, we forgot to put week done there, but I'll talk about it. It's an amazing tool for goal setting, tracking, and management of your entire team. So really see how close they are to the actual goals, what's lagging, and coach them if they need help with anything. It just gives you a clear picture of what's going on because, again, in a remote environment, you can't see anyone. You're blind to them, really. Whereas at the office, you can see what everyone's up to. You can walk by them and say, hey, where you at? What are you doing? Could you just send me an email once you're done with what the status is? But when you go remote, it's a whole lot more difficult. You've got different time zones. You're battling that. And you've also got different timings that people start. So having something within a platform where it's available to everyone and then for you to act upon it is super helpful. And the key thing I'm going to talk about in the next section is actually async versus synchronous communication. So this is something which is extremely important when you go remote, understanding this at the minimum, because when you're in a work environment where you're all at the office, you can talk in synchronous communication. So synchronous communication is when you're talking in real time. So that could be talking in person, Zoom right now, Slack instant messages, or Microsoft Teams instant messages. Asynchronous are your emails, are your project management tools, are recorded videos for later, or Loom, for example. They're all things that you do in your own time, right? Not connected to the other person in a very async manner. So when you do go remote, this becomes a whole lot more important because in order for you to have a productive team, you can't keep doing everything in a synchronous manner, right? You've got to reduce the amount of synchronous interactions you have and increase the amount of asynchronous interactions you have. Now, the risk with doing that is that if your team aren't on board with doing proper asynchronous communication, it becomes difficult to manage your team because you're then chasing up of what do you mean by what you just said over there? How does it tie into the other tasks we're doing? Those sort of conversations happen and it doesn't sound too good. And you just revert back to synchronous where you need a meeting every 15 to 20 minutes. Obviously exaggerating, but you need a meeting almost all the time. So again, over here, I do want to give you a quick fact though, that on average, a user spends 90 minutes, a remote worker, of active time on Slack per day. So that's 1.5 hours of paid time that could be optimized if we nail async and sync communication with remote work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about a few critical elements of an async question or update. Now, this could be an email that's sent to you or a text that's sent to you or anything which is, again, async in nature. Element 1, context. The message should include a recap of the project or situation, along with any useful background information on the situation. If it's sharing an update for status, flagging any blockers to move forward. Incredibly important. Deadline. Set a timeline for when you need to hear back. If it's still not urgent, still time box it. So for example, if it's just something like, hey, I've done the drafts, I just need to get back. I just need your feedback on how you like it, what changes we need, and then we'll carry on from there. Wrong. You do need to say, hey, we need it by this time, this day, just to get the ball moving forward. It's important as well with remote teams because tomorrow for you is different for someone in India, Philippines, or America. And that's the reason why we say time box it. Put a time there and put your time zones in that time box as well. Action needed. Be clear about what you're asking for, whether it's direction, feedback on a specific area, or approval. Now, when you're ambiguous about this and you're not too clear about what actions required, I'm guilty of this myself. I will assume some feedback emails are just my approval. So I'll just say, looks good, carry on. Again, be very clear about what it is that you require from the other person, particularly management, because you then make the job easier for management staff. And that's how you really nail async communication. Really making sure that context is there, a deadline is set, and the action needed is absolutely clear. A question you could ask yourself while you're writing these emails is that if I were getting this email and I had no idea what the project was, I had no idea no context of anything, and I needed to do something after reading that email, write it as if you're talking to yourself. That's a very good approach that we've seen with the team, and teams have been quite responsive and receptive to it. Again, it's something that doesn't happen overnight when you do ask them to follow a framework like this. We found that it takes a while. It takes, a month, max 1 to 2 weeks, and a couple of tries until they get it right. Again, that's also why a feedback system is very important. So when you do get these emails and you kind of see that, all right, well, they could have done this better, well, call it out, mention it, and let them know. It's really important. If you don't let them know, they won't improve. Again, it's what you do in normal work life, in a normal office. You've just got to take that remote. So let's talk about now some tools that we like to use to help with collaboration and productivity. So Range is one tool, and we use it for stand-ups and updates. So again, stand-ups were designed to keep teams in sync. And now what happens when you've got stand-up meetings with multiple staff members across multiple locations is that it's difficult to get on a stand-up call at the same time with similar schedules. That's when you can use a tool like Range, where you can actually go create your status updates and all that, your questions within the platform itself. So that when they are in different time zones, you've got one centralized location where you can go see that, act upon it, and then push that information out. So it's Range. Mural. I like this a lot. It's a virtual whiteboarding with an infinite canvas. So just as you would in a normal office, have a blank whiteboard and you would draw as much as you want. So again, in our company, 39% of engineers report that remote work makes it harder to collaborate. And teams that aren't sharing physical space will need to find a digital space to get work done together. And Miro is a good example of how we can actually do that. Virtual whiteboarding. Again, putting out ideas, just brainstorming anything, you can do it virtually quite well. Mural. Again, it's another whiteboarding tool, but it's more for design teams and tech teams, because teams can now use Mural to quickly and easily create diagrams on a shared whiteboard, right? So again, your diagrams would have your DRF diagrams, your normal design diagrams. You can put that all in agile methodologies within it, which are inbuilt, which makes whiteboarding remotely a whole lot more quicker for those design and technical folks. But for those of you who don't need that, Miro is a blank canvas and you can do whatever it is that you want. Stickies. Now, I'm sure in a normal office environment, you'd have this all around the office. Where's a virtual version of it? So you can create multiple stickies, share it with multiple team members, and move it around in a virtual workspace within the Stickies platform. Again, we're taking that offline experience and bringing it online. The last tool here is Fellow. Now, Fellow is a tool that enhances your meetings by letting you create a shared agenda, share suggested questions, provide feedback, and follow up on action items. We use this a lot with Zoom. It helps creating a lot of structure, not just for online meetings and remote meetings. We use this for our offline ones too. It's helped a lot in many ways. So that's a tool that I strongly recommend, regardless of whether you want to go remote or not. because it adds a lot of structure to your meetings. It keeps you on top of what needs to be done next. And particularly if you are working on multiple projects where they get shelved from time to time and you need to pick up the pace again, you do have a record of data where you can go see what was said before, what were actual next items, and carry on from that quite easily. And then, of course, for collaboration, tools like Slack and Microsoft Teams. Again, Slack is much more superior to Microsoft Teams because they've got a lot of integrations within it where you can connect it to your project management tools or even Fellow, Stickies, Miro, Range. Very easy to connect to Slack. So you can really boost a lot of that productivity and bring information to you a whole lot more quicker. But again, it's very much personal preference. Microsoft Teams or Slacks for your instant communication. And that's an example, again, of synchronous communication. So that pretty much sums up the 5 sections of the methods and tools you can use to onboard and work remotely a whole lot more effectively. I'm happy to answer any questions if you guys have any right now.
Say that was a fabulous and interesting, this has been like a really interesting session, a topic that we've never covered before, working internationally. And I think that there's a lot of benefits to hiring internationally, especially for small businesses with the skill sets of folks around the world, and just also creating this extra flavor that you can get when you hire internationally, especially with certain aspects like you talked about. You might be getting tech, or maybe you're getting design. Some of the design that comes out of different countries is just amazing and really unique in the market. And I think that can be like a really interesting and fun way to connect and spread the word about your product as well, because as they're involved, they're going to be talking to people that they know about the thing that they're working on. So it's quite a double win, we'll say.
And I'd also add that at the moment, what we've been seeing as well in the New Zealand business market is that from a tech perspective, speaking from there, and even design as well, is that a lot of the hip startups and larger companies are taking a lot of the local talent, where now talent that you need for the smaller businesses that of course need that talent don't have access to it. So going global is genuinely a solution to get that top talent and then give you that, again, advantage of having strong talent and moving ahead quicker.
Yeah, I love that. I think that there is a lot of value in thinking outside of the box, because that's essentially what this is, isn't it? I mean, we can often just think very much we're right here, but it can be daunting. But what you've outlined here is there's some really clear and strategic ways of doing these things so that they can be successful. And you've given some fabulous insight and lots of food for thought, I think, for our digital boosters watching now and on the other platforms and later. I'd just like to let everyone know, if you need help with this kind of stuff. Obviously, you had said, Picwa, you guys are tech. If you're looking for tech, come to us. If you're looking for graphics, don't come to us. So you really let us know that. But if you're watching this and you're now thinking, I need a little bit of assistance, I need to wrap my head around this a little bit more, contact support at digitalboost.co.nz, because we will help you kind of direct you a little bit and navigate. Now, there were so many great things mentioned in this session. I'm just wondering, are you sending through this PPT to me, like this set of slides? Are we able to do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic, because I'd love to drop it up on the site, pop it up on the site, and then people can go back and have a look at the names of those tools so they don't have to take notes the whole time. So if you're watching this on one of our other platforms and you haven't registered to Digital Boost, I would encourage you to register if you're sitting out there in the, on the edges, because folks like AJ, they actually submit these PPTs quite often, and we upload them as learning summaries that you can download as a PDF. So it gives you that opportunity to just kind of reference the areas that you found really interesting and wanted to revisit without having to watch the full session again, which is really useful. I just want to say, I just thank you so much for coming on and speaking about this. You're an expert in your field, and it clearly showed today. This presentation was amazing. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. No, absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. So I think we're chewing on that. I think that's our Friday. I think we're done. You can go relax now. I don't know.
Awesome.
Maybe you just go and sit outside and have your 6th cup of coffee. That might be Danger Town though, AJ. It may be a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's Freedom Day today, so I might go take advantage of that.
Yes, fantastic. What's Freedom Day? What does that mean?
Well, we're free today. We don't have any.
Red means go. Red means go.
Yes. Yeah.
Red's
for the first time, red means go.
For the
on the traffic light system.
Somebody told me that they're a marketer. They do digital marketing and stuff like that. And she said, we just had to come up with this slogan that just was, we're like, well, how do we say this? How do we make it, and she was like, red means go. And it's so counterintuitive.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. But I mean, it is what it is. And I hope we stay in a system like this and we don't move into something new next year.
Awesome. You know what? I can't believe it's been 2 years. It's been a wild ride, hasn't it?
That's what, it has.
But it's really taught us a lot of skills, especially in this space. Like we've had to advance so far. And so there has been some real pluses as well.
No, absolutely.
Stick to the positive. We're going to stay there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Exactly. Yep. Alrighty.
Well, Kakite, everyone have a wonderful day. Enjoy yourself, AJ. Take advantage. And we'll